Welcome, Buff fans, to another episode of the Primetime Night Owls. Matt Smith joining me once again. We're going to preview the spring, spring football for the Buffaloes, and we've sort of been doing that over the past couple episodes, Matt. But we're really going to focus 100% on just previewing spring ball and looking ahead to the 15 practices for the Buffaloes, which start this week. Tuesday is the first one. They also go Thursday and Saturday, and then they'll go three next week and then have the week off for spring break, and then have 3 more weeks after that. So 15 practices, we'll get to start talking to people, which is crazy. We haven't talked to anybody involved with the program since San Antonio. So it'll be kind of nice to talk to people that are involved with the program.
Yeah, sure they can't wait. I'm sure they're waiting on bated breath to
Right.
talk to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm ready to get going again. It's definitely been a very eventful last few months for sure. It's definitely the most eventful downtime, at least between end of season and beginning of spring, that this program has had in a while because of all the NFL action and NFL draft action. But I'm looking forward to it because it's a new chapter, right? New era. It's
Yeah.
Act Two or Act Three, whatever you want to call it right now. The turning the page from Shadur and Travis. So it's a huge opportunity this spring. You have a lot of guys that'll be vying for playing time. I think it was Coach Cheney who put it on social media. I saw. There's either two ways you leave spring. It's yeah, he's ready or he's not ready. You get to decide, which impression the coach comes away with, which is important because there's going to be a lot of competition. In some rooms, it's a little bit more clear than others, but certainly it should be a very exciting time period because not only are you assimilating a bunch of new players yet again, but also a significant portion of the staff is turning over. So this is an important time to, kind of get some of the kinks out, implement the foundation. And one of the things that we've talked about is because you don't have that in-room leadership necessarily that you had the last couple of seasons with guys who have been in the system for 4 years and understand what is going to be required and what is going to be asked of them. You've got some of those guys for sure, but the tent poles are different. So again, we've spoken about it, how I think as a coaching staff, you probably approach that a little bit more hands-on than they have had to be the last couple of years, just because,
Yeah.
hey, let's make sure that we get off, on the right foot here. And until we see the things that we want to see, maybe micromanage just a little bit more than we would have in the past with guys like Travis Shadur, Shiloh, Cam, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think it's a big few weeks here for this program to reset and move forward.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting because, you mentioned some of that leadership, and Coach Prime during his college coaching career, really, I mean, his whole coaching career, really, he's had his sons on either side of the ball. I know Shiloh hasn't always been there because he went off to South Carolina for a little bit, but certainly here at Colorado, you had Shadur on offense, you had Shiloh on defense, and obviously when you have your sons there, they know exactly what their dad wants and can set the tone there and kind of set the standard a little bit. And you don't have that anymore. Cam Silman Craig knew exactly what Coach Prime wanted. He's not there anymore. And it's not to say that there aren't others that don't know what that means. Tyler Brown's been with Coach Prime now for
Sure.
a few years, and guys that were here last year, they know the standard a little bit. But I think it's different when you've had your sons who, and a lot's to be made of that, right? That he doesn't have his sons anymore. But I think the one aspect for me that's interesting is the fact that they've been able to set that tone on either side of the ball, and you've been able to have that Sanders voice on either side of the ball, and now you don't have that anymore. So it'll be interesting. I think as we're talking about this, as far as the main storylines going into spring, I mean, to me, that's one of them. It's like, how does Coach Prime adjust without his sons? And he got into coaching to help out his sons because he didn't like the way they were being coached in youth football. So he's always had at least Shadur with him, and he's had Shiloh for most of that as well. And now he doesn't have that. So I think that's the biggest storyline coming into spring. But it's also, not. I mean, when you take out him, it's how does this team respond without those guys anymore? You lost Shadur, you lost the Heisman Trophy winner and Travis Hunter. You've got several NFL receivers that are gone, and a lot of the core of your defense. So there's a lot of turnover on this team.
Yeah, and the other thing that I've seen, at least
Hmm.
from very, very limited uh, clips posted on Well Off. Caden Salter's a little bit more soft-spoken than Shador. Shador maybe didn't speak a lot in front of the team. He kind of let other people handle that, but he did more specifically to the offense and the wide receiver group and the offensive line group. He was a little bit more demanding of them maybe than the entire team. I think Salter, this is a big opportunity for him to become a big vocal leader. I don't think that's really a negotiable. They've got some of those guys. I think he needs to be that. You need that from the quarterback position, especially because, look, the best asset that he's bringing right now is his experience. Before anybody takes the field, before there's even a practice, it's the fact that he's a guy that we're going to head into camp relying on having gone through the fire of several different spring balls and understanding what it takes, what to get out of it. And now also having to prove himself in a competition as well. But somebody's got to lead the charge because there was an unspoken presence when Shador walks out in the field. Everybody's, I mean, not did it happen every day? No, it didn't happen every day. But the unspoken presence was we better not be out here to mess around. We're
Mhm.
out here to get better. And certainly the coaches will be, all over that, but it's on the players to set that tone. And certainly you want to see that from the quarterback position, which is one of the areas where Shador really shined, even though for some reason the people who have never met him, never talked to him, never watched the games in person, et cetera, talking about he's a bad leader, these, bogus scouts. But anybody who'd be around him knew just how highly his teammates thought of him and just how much he was thinking about everybody else and wanted to make sure that everybody else was, accounted for and taken care of. And that's a very important responsibility, especially when you're brand new, which Caden Salter is. So that's a big part of it as well, right? Tip of the spear, head of the charge,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and that'll lead us into the top position battles, which I think everybody knows the number one is quarterback, right? And that's the one that everybody's gonna be watching because for the first time in 3 years, Colorado has a quarterback battle, and for the first time in a long time, it's an
Yeah, I was gonna
interesting
say.
quarterback battle. Because the last time there was a really a battle for the job was pre-prime, and the competition wasn't great. It was we don't need to go through the names, but it obviously was not a great group of quarterbacks.
It's like
And
a Nerf gun fight. If it was a
right,
battle, it
yeah,
wasn't like a war. It was like a pew 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 pew.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
who's who's the least
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
here, and that's what it's going to be.
Who's
And
gonna make the least amount of mistakes?
right,
Of
and
egregious mistakes.
and it turned out to be an undersized true freshman, Owen McCown, who
Yeah.
who got that job midway through the season, but not coming out of
Didn't
camp.
keep
So
it. Yeah.
he didn't keep it only because he got hurt because he was
Right.
a little undersized. But um, yeah, it's the first time in 3 years there's a quarterback battle. I think it's the most interesting quarterback battle at Colorado in a very long time. I don't remember the last time uh, there was one this good, Matt. I mean, even we talked before, like the talent in the QB room. Um, I would argue we talked about like when in 2016 when they had Cepho Lufau and Steven Montez and even Sam Neuer who went on to be second team all conference in the COVID year. There was
Right.
pretty good talent there, but there was no question who the quarterback was. There wasn't a battle for that job. This is one where it's like there's a battle, and um, you mentioned Caden Salter. I think this is a real opportunity for him. I agree with you that look, he's got 1 year of college left, and if he wants
Yeah.
to play in the NFL, which I imagine he does, this is a massive year for him. And we know Julian Lewis wants to play in the NFL, but he's got a long time to prove himself. He doesn't have to win the job this year to set himself up for the future. This is a big one for Caden Salter to prove that he can be that guy. And it's probably bigger than this year for Caden Salter. I think it's there's the NFL on his mind, I would guess. We haven't talked to him yet. I think we're going to this week, but I'm thinking that this is a big year for him for a lot of reasons, and he's got to prove himself not only as a player. He needs a bounce back year because he obviously dipped a little bit last year. But he's got to prove himself as a leader, as you mentioned, and he's got to seize that job and take Colorado back to a bowl game.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's certainly the goal. And it may seem lofty, but that's why you want to come to Colorado. It's
Yeah,
NFL, not NIL, right?
yeah.
And everything you said, I agree with. I echo a lot of that. And just to kind of further what I was talking about with the leadership, it's one of those things where you don't wait for it. I was just having a conversation with somebody about this today. Some guys have that, some guys don't. But
Mhm.
when you step between the white lines, as Coach Prime likes to say, get some grass under your cleats. That's when it's got to change. And I think that you saw in many ways last year the transformation of the team was because, yes, you had better coaching and certainly a better scheme defensively, but you did have a lot of experience, a lot of maturity, and some of those guys even grew up a little bit more. Levante
Yeah.
Bentley came in as an older guy, and when he left, I mean, the young man who arrived and the young man who left was completely different, even though he
Hmm.
had played a lot of college football, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of goes down the list. Shane Cokes, I would say maybe a little bit different because he was an Ivy leaguer, but even Shane to an extent. And you go down the list of guys who just understood what was required. And there's
Yeah.
one thing that Tad Boyle, always used to say, and it's burned in my memory. It's effort is the price of admission, right? As a coach, you should never have to coach effort, and those are the type of guys. The Jordan Seaton. I don't know if you saw that clip on Well Off of him dogging Cardi, just getting all over Cardi about, hey, up and down, right? This is when you're breaking in the kids and getting everybody used to this isn't high school anymore,
Hmm.
and you may have been the dude in high school, but you're not the dude now. Everybody in this room was a dude in high school, and so
Yeah.
we talked about the maturity and the experience and the growth of Jordan Seaton. That's a great example. There's a void in vocal leadership. Jordan Seaton's coming in to fill it, and we spoke about that before too. So, yeah, quarterback wise, here's what I have to say for Juju. Just be a sponge, right? I think at this point, yeah, you want to obviously beat Salter and win the job, but this is a huge learning experience for Juju, especially at the quarterback position. And look, the players you end spring with are probably not the ones you're going to begin fall with. So that's why you really got to make sure that, hey, I got my guy. There's always, in coaching, there's one thing I always love to say. It's like, hey, if your team's not playing well or not everybody's focused, at least if you're going to hold them accountable and they're not paying attention, the very least you could say is, I got my guy.
Yeah.
And for Juju, it's just going to be all about, hey, I need to lock in and just be a sponge, learn, learn, learn.
Yeah. And as far as he goes, obviously people are very excited about him because he's a five-star, quarterback recruit, early enrollee, double early enrollee. I mean, reclassified. He should be finishing up his junior year of high school, but instead he graduated a year and a half early and he's here. Obviously extremely talented, Matt, and Buff fans should be excited about him. I'm excited to see what he can do. Um, can he win this job? Yes, I think he can, but will he? I think that's what's going to be interesting about this spring is, do you have the seasoned veteran, the guy in Caden Salter who's been doing this for a while in college football, or do you have the really, really young kid
Mm.
come in here who is the five-star and take that job? And so I think that's what's going to be fascinating about this spring, and I'm eager to see, Julian Lewis, and from all accounts, what we've seen, he works really hard and I think he looks like he's been that sponge. I imagine he's like a lot of freshmen. I mean, Jordan Seaton was swimming a little bit last year, when he first got here, and mentally is what I'm talking about, just trying to grasp everything. I imagine he's doing that as well, and that's no knock on him. That's what most true freshmen do. It's a lot coming at you at once. There's the phrase drinking from the fire hose, right? I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of what those young guys do. And so can he handle a lot of that? So I'm curious to see him. And that battle is going to be interesting because of those different dynamics and the different areas or stages of their careers that they're in.
Undoubtedly. And the other part of this that we haven't really talked about, but is important to note in the quarterback conversation is not only are you working two new quarterbacks and hopefully a little bit of a new system. I'm just knocking on wood. Like,
Yeah.
there was a scathing review of their offense. I don't know if you saw, but from oh God, JT O'Sullivan, QB School. He does a ton of YouTube stuff. Former, college quarterback. I believe he had a cup of coffee in the NFL. Maybe. Anyway, the point was, I mean, just ripping their offense apart, which you and I even tagged you. I
And he
was
was,
like,
yeah, it was reviewing Shador, but
and
his,
oh, by the way, here's what I also noticed. It was incredibly
yeah,
dysfunctional to
yeah,
the degree of all the stuff that we talked about, right? The no tight ends, the no running game, struggling with stunts, offensive line still terrible, no variation, no pre-snap motion, too predictable. Like all that stuff that you and I had been talking about,
yeah,
just felt like I couldn't say it again by the end of the year. He had brought up. And so that should be, and look, they shouldn't need some, random guy to be able to, see that on film and say it. But I do hope that they really, now that Shador is out of the way and you're going to have to do things differently. Not that he's out of the way, but that he's moved on and now you have to go to the
Yeah.
next chapter of your offense. They really got to take advantage of doing things a little bit differently. And one of the things that we didn't get a chance to ask Coach Prime at the end of the year that I really wanted to was about offseason priorities because he
Right.
talked to us at the end of year one about running the football being priority 1A and 1B being stopping the run. They solved the stopping the run, the running the ball, they didn't fix it all. It was the
Yeah.
back-to-back worst rushing team in the country for 2 years running. That's
And it was
unacceptable.
worse this last year than it was the previous year.
100%.
Yeah.
And they haven't added any other backs,
Right.
right? And now
Hmm.
you have a totally new offensive line group. So not only do you have to get used to cadences and tendencies and chemistry, but that was something you didn't have to worry
Hmm.
about in large part last year because you knew Shador was going to take care of. Now you
Yeah.
probably got to be a little bit more mindful of it because you got to get a lot of new guys. First of all, learning the system. Second of all, on the same page. Third of all, it's not from you know, the guy who is basically the textbook himself in Shador, right?
Yeah.
It's somebody, it's a peer. So now it's a little bit different. You probably won't be able to move through concepts as quickly. So you've got to make sure that you make the work count so you're as efficient with the time allotted as possible.
Yeah. And it'll, uh, we're still talking about quarterbacks, but this will be a big year for Pat Shermer too. How do you
Huge.
do now without Shador,
Yeah.
who, quite frankly, and this is, I'm not trying to knock on Pat Shermer, but Shador is just one of those quarterbacks that he can bail you out,
Yep.
and I often said, I got the old school Bronco hat on, but he reminded me a little bit of the John Elway Broncos that I grew up watching, in that there were a lot of games where CU necessarily wasn't playing great, but you knew that as long as you had Shador Sanders, that you had a shot. And that's the way the
Right.
Broncos were for a long time when I was growing up. Was okay, they're not playing great, but you have John Elway, and every time Shador would walk out to start a new drive, it didn't always work out this way, but in my mind, it was all right. This offense, if they can go down here and score, and there was a little bit of confidence in your mind that they can go down there and score. And look, quite frankly, uh, they don't win that Baylor game without Shador making just an unbelievable bailout throw, right? And so um, that's just the way he was. And so it'll be an interesting year for Pat Shermer and how he works with these other quarterbacks that are not Shador Sanders. And one last thing on quarterback is I keep mentioning it, but I don't want to discount Ryan Staub. I know that he is the long shot here, but he is in that quarterback room. It'll be his third year in the program, and well, we'll see if he sticks around in the fall. But for now, he's in the program, and I don't want to discount him. He's in that competition as well. So he's sort of the wild card in that race. But you got three guys now that are got some talent, and two guys with experience, but you got a lot of talent in that room.
Yeah, and the one other part of this is, Dominique Ponder, they were high on, right? At the beginning of last year, they liked some of
Yeah,
the stuff he could do. But I just want to make sure that when people, hear us talk about quarterbacks, there's a big difference from like, okay, having some potential and being the guy.
yeah,
You can have some potential, you can show some flashes, but there's a massive difference for between that and being the guy. So naturally, and this is nothing against Salter, but our starting assumption has to be that Colorado will have worse quarterback play in 25 than they did 24. It would be
mhm,
pretty hard to have better quarterback play. There you go. I'll challenge you, Caden Salter. Be better than Shador was the
yeah,
last 2 years. My point is the safe assumption to go, okay, well, it probably won't be as consistent. It probably won't be as efficient, at least at the beginning. And then you'll have to move from there.
yeah,
However, it doesn't matter if that's Juju or Caden. And I'll be curious to see because those two guys are a different style, right? Caden Salter's a little bit more of a mobile quarterback than Juju
yeah,
is, and certainly Juju's going to have to prove that he can take a hit, get back up, and lead a bunch of guys as well at this level, especially for being as young as he is. So my expectations are, you start with Salter. To be honest with you, I'd probably give him lead reps because you
yeah,
just don't have a lot of time. I probably wouldn't start with like a even Steven, maybe the first couple days, but outside of that, I would really be making sure that I maximized the time that I was allotted on field with Shermer and Salter so they could get as comfortable as possible. And look, And if Juju shows up ready to party, ready to dance, that's going to come out in the wash, and then
Yeah.
you'll adjust and you'll move from there.
Yeah. I'll also add, I mean, Staub is different from those other two as well. So you got three different styles of quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to see, how that pans out. Let's move on. Other position battles. I'm gonna go down my list and you can add to it if you
Hey,
want. But
timeout. Sorry, real quick.
yeah.
Who is the quarterbacks coach this year? Is there an official one? Is there
Well,
someone who has that official title?
Shermer.
Is Shermer because it was Pollock? Was it last year was Pollock?
No, it's been Shermer.
Well, he was.
Pollock Pollock has
Didn't he
been
do
kind of
something with the
the
quarterback, like the quasi quarterbacks coach, kind of the
no,
floater?
he's been kind of a quality control guy, but it's been
Okay.
Shermer. And so
Are you
it'll
sure?
stay with Shermer. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sure.
Continue.
So, all right, let's move on. To me, the second biggest position battle is at inside linebacker. And because you lost both guys, Nikai Hill Green, Levante Bentley are both gone. And you've got to figure out who your two inside linebackers are because that's the middle of your defense. And, the cliche, that's the quarterback of the defense, right? Is those inside linebackers. Uh, that's going to be an interesting battle, Matt. I mean, you got Martavius French coming in from UTSA, Reginald Hughes from Jacksonville State. Both guys were all conference type players, but at a lower level, well, not same level, but lower conference, right? But then you got a Jeremiah Brown who's got one last year to prove himself. He hasn't really gotten on the field in a couple of years at Colorado, highly productive at Jackson State. And then Jalen Wester, who flashed a little bit last year as a backup. And so those guys have a shot. And you have Kylan Salter, Kyron Garcia, Mantrez Walker's a freshman coming in here. So that battle is going to be interesting to me.
Yeah, this is a room that we talked about that neither one of us have the highest of expectations for at the moment in time. In fact, I'm not convinced that your starters this year are even on the team yet. Nikai Hill Green wasn't with the Buffs in the spring, and they found him after that, right? So anything could happen. What I would just say at that position is you've probably got Jeremiah Brown and Jalen Wester right there, at least to begin things because of the experience. Both those guys have played a little bit. But beyond that, no one has earned anything. That is a completely open competition. That's proving grounds every day. And we know that Coach Hart likes to keep you on your toes. So
Yeah.
you'll come in one day, it'll be one way. The next day, it'll be the next. And they're not going to tell you. They're not going to give you any heads up about what it is. They want to react to how you react in the moment, right? Can you adapt on the fly? Are you a good teammate? What is it when you're not the guy, right? That's at every position, but specifically Coach Hart, he's got that part of it. He's a bit of a trickster, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's savvy, right? So that'll be an interesting position. But again, that's one of those where I wish we could be watching every practice to see the development and to see what those guys really have. And that's also one of those positions that you probably won't even really be able to completely evaluate in spring ball because it's, tackling. So
Right.
we'll see how that goes. That's all going to be speculation. And again, that's one of those things where I remember one of the first, I believe that Trevor was the first person that we spoke to last spring. And the first thing I asked Trevor was there ever a point that you considered transferring? Because you're not going to be the plan. That was my first thought was you're not going to be the plan here.
Yeah.
And, it turned out to be the case. I would say the same, although it's really to French and Hughes. I mean, look, it's March 9th. The last time we saw these guys play football was what, 2 months ago, basically 2.5 months ago, maybe not even. I'm not expecting Jeremiah Brown and Jalen Wester to have taken all of a sudden this massive jump, right? It's
Mm.
more about what are these new guys going to be able to bring, and then the development of everybody else over the summer. And maybe
Yeah.
is Kyron Garcia, a guy who can come out of the woodwork, just throwing a name out there, but one of those younger guys.
Yeah, and Kylan Salter, Caden's brother,
Yeah.
coming over from TCU, is he in the mix? But I would think it starts with French, Hughes, Brown, and Wester, and we'll see from there. That's a position group that I would guess the only practice we get to watch is the spring game. That's
Oh,
kind of
for
the way it's
sure.
been.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would
not the
hope.
first year. We got one practice the first year.
Yeah, I think we got one the first year, but
Yeah. It would be
um,
nice, by the way, since there's so many new kids. It would be
yeah,
great to be able. I'm putting that out there to any of the powers that be who may be watching. We would
yeah, great.
greatly
Yeah,
appreciate that.
they love your opinion. Thanks, Matt.
I know they love my opinion, but I'm just putting it out there.
No, I'm just saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
it,
Social
we'd
media
love it too.
moratorium. We'll leave the phones outside.
Yeah, they
It
know
would just
we'd
be
love
nice
it.
to get to know the kids.
They know we'd love it, and they're going to say, "Here you go,
Just putting it out there. They
well
can
off
laugh at.
media."
I can hear them laughing at me right now, but I just felt like I had to say it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a position group I'll be watching on the well off videos and things like that, and I hope that they're all healthy for the spring game because I want to see at least those four guys and see what that position group looks like. So, um, maybe a little higher on that group than you are. In the I'm curious to see French and Hughes and see if they're the guys. Maybe that's a place that they hit the portal after the spring, but inside linebacker to me is going to be an interesting one. Let's move on to the lines. Um, I think number three for me is a tie, offensive and defensive lines. These battles are going to be huge in the spring. Uh, I guess you'd put offensive line for me maybe a little bit ahead because it's so important and it's been such a struggle. But you've also you've got a lot more guys back at this group, so you kind of know what you have more so here than you do on the defensive line. I think because obviously Jordan Seaton's back. You got Tyler Brown is back. Kareem Harden's back. Philip Houston, we think is back, but he's not going to go through spring coming off the ACL. Who else?
Who do you need? Can we? Before, don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
If you could, let me finish this sentence. If you could come out of a spring ball knowing blank about the offensive line, it would be a success.
knowing they can run block.
Well, I mean, I don't know that we're going to be able to know that. That's one of those things that'll be till the fall when you really start hitting.
That's
I
true.
mean, maybe a little bit, but it's just more like to me, it would be, hey, I know who it'll be a good thing if you came out of spring having a good idea who your interior is going to be,
Yeah,
right? Who your right tackle is going to be. Like there are the reason why I asked you it that way is there is so much unproven and to be determined on that side of the ball that I would have it firmly above the defensive line.
yeah,
They've got some guys in there I trust enough to know that they'll be at least a baseline. You had a lot of guys or at least Barnes and McNeil in there, and we'll see what the deal is with Otis. But Carter looks like he's healthy. Tawfiq Thomas between Barnes, McNeil, and Thomas, you had three guys that did play a lot last year.
yeah,
So at a bare minimum, I feel comfortable about that. Outside of the left tackle, I don't think anything is set in stone for the
right.
offensive line, and I don't have any idea what to expect. We spoke about this maybe last week or the week before, but my expectations are none right
Yeah.
now.
Well,
So you've got to
so
go
let
out
me
there and
let me
prove it.
re-answer your question and because you're right. I don't know why. I mean, the run blocking, you're not going to know that, I guess, because
Yeah.
you're not going to tackle as much. I guess for me, I would re-answer it and say, I think you want to come out of spring knowing, do we need more or not? Are we okay with what we have? Is this group, did they feel good enough about this group that they don't need to dive into the portal and get more? Or are they coming out of it saying, man, we really need to go get a couple more guards? We really need to go get another right tackle, because that's the thing is, Philip Houston was your starting right tackle most of last year, but you won't have him this spring. And, so you're going to be down one guy at least.
So is it Ben Resnick who starts the spring at right tackle, or is it Cardi? I mean, I don't think
Yeah, I don't
Cardi's
know.
ready yet.
I
From
mean,
everything I've seen, I mean, it's early.
yeah.
Offensive line's the toughest position to play. I
Well,
think
I
he
think
needs
you
some
want, I
time.
mean, look, there's a ton of seniors in that group, and Zy Chrysler, I think is more of a guard, but the kid from Illinois,
Didn't he play tackle in Illinois or no?
yeah, I thought he was guard, but
Okay.
I mean 6'6",
I
335.
thought he was a
You
left
know,
tackle.
maybe he's a
Maybe he's
maybe
a
he's
right
a I
tackle.
don't know. Aki Ogunbiyi from Texas A&M was a
That's
backup
a
type of
tackle.
guy.
Yeah.
Mana Tamani from Ole Miss, 6'4", 345. These are guys I'm curious to see how they fit in. Zarian McGill, um, I know everybody, Cash Cleveland came in and did a nice job at the end of this last year. But you bring in really a fifth year guy in Zarian McGill who, has the bonus year because of the JUCO ruling that you're bringing him in to be your starting center, I think, as a senior. And so I think you want to see Zarian McGill step up and take that job. You want to see Jordan Seaton be take his game to another level. If you've got a better Jordan Seaton and you got Zary McGill taking over that job, and you can get some pieces around them, I think you come out of spring feeling better about the line.
That's a lot of if you can, if you can, if you can, my
Yeah,
friend.
but I don't know if that's a lot because I think to me, it's a given Jordan Seaton's going to be better. To me, it's almost I don't know if it's a given, but I feel good about having a very experienced center in Zary McGill.
I would just say the only given is that Jordan Seaton will be improved. That's the
Right.
only given.
I
I
agree.
mean, the only reason I say that, and it's not because I don't believe in these guys, I don't know what they're capable of yet at this level. Here's the other part of it. Think about the conversations that we would have had last year this time with offensive line and what
Yeah.
it ended up looking like after spring and then what it ended up looking like by week 6.
Yeah.
We thought it was going to be one. We thought Tyler Johnson was for sure a starter,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he never sniffed the field, and we thought a lot of things that didn't end up panning out. We thought, shoot, I had people telling me over the summer, Justin Mayer's, bona fide NFL guy. He's going to he'll make a rookie mini camp, I think. But beyond that, maybe he's a camp body, but I don't know. I like
Yeah.
the guy a lot, but I'm not exactly sure. So just have to remember that offensive line, there's a lot that needs to go into it. Not to mention you have a brand new coaching staff,
Yeah.
so outside
I'll
of Gunner
I'll say this too. One
or Coach
guy,
White.
yeah, Tyler Brown is one that I still believe in Tyler Brown. I know
So do I.
he had a rough year at times last year, but I also think that they played him out of position half the year. He's not a tackle. I think that he can be a good guard, but he was in and out of
Who's gonna be?
tackle and guard, and I would love to see them just say Tyler Brown, you're a guard, and just give him you're the right guard, you're the left guard, whatever. And I think I get what they've done in the past with the cross training. They talked a lot about that last year, right? Of guys playing different spots. I think sometimes that backfires, and maybe it did last year. Just go all in and you learn this position. I get the value of it because if guys get hurt, then you got to move people around. But um, I've seen a lot of times where an offensive line, there's not a lot of injuries, and so don't plan on getting hurt. If it happens, adjust. But I would love to see with a guy like Tyler Brown. I think he can be a really talented guard, and I'd love to see them just go all in and say, "You are a guard. We're not moving you. You are a guard, and let's go."
So for Chrysler, by the way, he did play all 12 games last year as a senior with 6 starts at right guard and in 24 starts in the 3 years prior to his senior year, 13 at right guard, 9 at right guard, and two
Okay,
at right tackle. So,
that's what I thought. I
uh,
thought he was a
yeah,
guard. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, so that then again it begs the question, who's your tackle, right? Is it the A&M kid? And then we haven't what's the Mania what's the
Monotomani.
yeah, Monta is that what it is?
Yeah, I
That
think that's how you say it.
I mean we're gonna
Taimani.
Mana Taimani, I think that's
Yeah,
what it is. He's can he be a factor? I think he's an interior guy as well, right?
I think
Um
so. Yeah,
the other one is Chrysler, so maybe Brown is a factor. But at the end of last year, we were talking about Tyler Brown playing defensive line because there wasn't any room for him, and they
yeah.
were short on the defensive line, so they needed a little help. Is he going to go both ways again? Is that the best use of his time? I'm not sure. These
But
are all
that's one
questions
too. Yeah, and
that they'll have to figure out.
I agree, and that's one too. I think that by the end of the year, um, Justin Mayers had settled in at guard, and Kareem Harden had done a nice job, and I think that's where, to me, maybe Tyler Brown got a little messed up with the position changes, the in and out of the lineup, things like that. I would just like to see him if you're all in on you're a guard and just settle into this. What can he be? Because I think there's a lot more potential in him than what we got to see last year, and so that's what I'd like to see them do with Tyler Brown is just commit to him being in one spot because I think he can be a really good player.
I think the point is, if you would have asked me at the beginning of spring what 5 I thought were going to start on the offensive line, and then again at the end of the spring, and then again at the beginning of fall, and then again week 1, they would have all been different answers.
Yeah,
So I just don't have a ton of expectations. Let's see how it comes out in the wash. Again, without being able to see that group every day, that's really hard to make any judgments about in the spring, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's really tough because if you don't see the day-to-day progression, certainly one spring practice before summer is not an ideal or even acceptable sample size to really make a judgment on.
Right. Yeah. So the offensive line will be interesting. Defensive line, you talked about it a little bit. That position battle, I think, is going to be interesting because you do have, and we talked about this last week, but Anquin Barnes, Amari McNeil both played, quite a bit this last year. Tafik Thomas, we saw a little bit of him. Torian Carter, we saw a little bit before he got hurt early last year. I'm looking forward to him. Those are the four guys back. But then you got some guys, Tavian Coleman from Texas State, Gabriel Lightfoot from Fresno, and Jaheim Otis from
Mhm.
Alabama, who's the more highly rated transfer coming in. So I think it's a good group. And Alexander McPherson is a true freshman coming in that was really turning some heads at the Alamo Bowl practices. So um, I think there's less question about this group, but I think it's going to be an interesting battle to see how those newcomers fit in with the guys that have been playing here.
Yeah, not as experienced as last year, certainly.
Right.
And I would say maybe quality of talent deeper overall. I like what McPherson can do, and Hudson's often a forgotten name as
Yeah.
well as. Did you mention Davis Swain? You might have. The point was,
I've
I
got him
think
more defensive end, but
I think he'll be more interior guy. I remember at the end of last year, he was looking pretty big to me. Maybe I'm
yeah,
wrong on that one, but maybe he can maybe move around a little bit. The point here remains the same. I'm not entirely sure they're done at this position either. We'll see how it shakes out. And again, you're also changing the dynamics of that room as well, coaching staff wise. Now adding George Hilo into the mix, right, and bringing in Domata Peko to lead the charge there with Coach Sapp. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens, but this is one of those where, man, it'd be nice if one of the young guys popped. This is where, hey, what if McPherson can give you some snaps? We think he can, but what if he proves that, right?
yeah,
Th-
yeah.
There were some very, good things said about him after the bowl practices, so I've got some expectations for him. But I also Barnes, McNeil, Thomas. Hello, guys. Time is now, right? I kind of go back to what we opened the podcast with from Coach Cheney. Talking about, hey, I'm going to leave this spring as a coach with two impressions of you. He's met the moment, or he's not ready yet. And which is it going to be? And for Barnes, McNeil, and Thomas, I would just say, carpe diem, gentlemen.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And as far as not being done at those positions, they got a bunch of open scholarship spots, so they may not be done at any positions. There's gonna be a lot of movement after spring. So,
I agree.
um, one last position group I've got listed receiver. Obviously, they're losing four NFL receivers. You got Travis, Jimmy, Lejante, and Will that are off to the NFL or well preparing for the NFL. We know for sure one of them will be drafted. I would guess there's more than one drafted, but um, as far as who's coming back, they're pretty light on numbers right now, Matt. They've usually had, 12 to 15 guys. There's eight on scholarship right now as you come into spring. So as far as not being done, but receivers a spot I expect them to add quite a bit. But I really like what they have. You got Omarion Miller, Draylon Miller. Terrell Timmons is a guy that I'm looking forward to taking that big step. We talked about that last week. Joseph Williams, the kid from Tulsa, coming in, had a really good year, freshman year at Tulsa last year.
Was he
Uh,
was he ACC Freshman of the Year
well,
or
AAC,
AAC? Excuse me. Thank you.
AAC, yeah, Rookie of the Year or whatever they call it, Freshman of the
Yeah.
Year.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think his numbers 500 yards, something like that. But
Yeah.
Freshman of the
Still,
year,
he was honored. He
yeah,
was honored. Yeah.
that's a really good freshman year. So
Yeah.
um, this group, it's going to be interesting. I would pencil in the two Millers as
Yeah.
starting spots. And then beyond that, I think it's there for a Terrell Timmons, who is right now the lone senior in that group. I'd probably pencil in Joseph Williams as a starter right now, but Cam McKell, Quanell Farrakhan Jr., Quentin Gibson, Adrian Wilson. I mean, these are some really talented kids that you're going to make a play for some starting jobs as well. So that position group is going to be really entertaining to watch this spring.
Yeah, and let me bring up some of these younger guys because I'm, very bullish in a lot of their younger talent, but specifically this position, I think they're going to have some guys that end up hitting here pretty nicely. In the
Yeah,
past couple of years, they've had some younger guys brought in, and you go, okay, well maybe I could see it, and then they kind of faded out as they were trying to, continually upgrade the quality of talent that they brought in. The one thing I'll say I've noticed is Quanell Farrakhan is whenever I've seen, picture on social media, he's everywhere. He's doing everything. He's really
yeah,
ingratiating himself to the program, to being a college student. Looks like he's got a great attitude. I don't know if I've seen anything of Adrian Wilson yet, but again, folks, you have to remember Brian and I will be meeting and maybe not meeting some of these kids for the very first time, and this is a whole brand new batch. This is just the third season, Brian, that we're now going to have to go through this process of really getting to know these kids intimately, or at least, as intimately as we can.
yeah,
But that trio of freshmen, and you can even throw Cam Michael in there because, he really wasn't a factor last year because of injury. But, Wilson, Farrakhan, Gibson. Gibson's got a great attitude. Wilson's an athletic freak. So I'm looking at that room right now and going, okay, there's some competition, but one of these younger guys go prove to me that I don't need to go get that transfer
yeah.
because I'm good there, So I would like to see a lot of reps. It's kind of I kind of like the way it stacks out because get these young guys reps. These kids can run for days. You know what I mean? You don't want to burn them out, but you got a lot of talent here to work with.
Yeah, and another guy, he's technically a walk-on, but it's a big opportunity for Caleb Mathis too.
Huge.
Who his father obviously is the cornerbacks coach, and caught a couple passes 2 years ago. Didn't really get on the field this last year, so he's a guy that can't be forgotten,
And he
especially
can play.
yeah, he can play, and especially going into spring when there's only those 8 scholarship guys, there's going to be an opportunity there. And you remember last year? I mean, I think it was receiver was one of those spots where there was a rash of injuries, and there was times where they were down to 3, 4 guys, and so even with the numbers they had, so you got to keep those guys healthy. But I think the competition at receiver is going to be really entertaining and fun to watch. But I do expect the two Millers, Omarion and Draylon to lead that group, and from there kind of fall in after that, and it'll be fun to watch.
I agree. I agree. Again, to to earn snaps and playing time as a true freshman for Coach Phillips, you got to make sure that you prove to him that he can trust you,
Yeah,
right? So that's a big part of it. But how far along is Omarion Miller? Probably don't want to overdo it with him too much in spring as he continues to rehab, right? Be a big spring for Draylon Miller and some of these younger guys, right? Just you brought it up because of the lack of overall numbers, you should get a lot of reps. So
yeah,
every day you got to be getting better. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind.
yeah. And I'm looking at the list. Caleb Mathis might be the most tenured buff at in that receiver room coming into his third year.
Yeah, I mean him
So,
or Omarion. I mean, it would be one of the
well, yeah,
two.
Omarion was here for 3 years too, or has
Yeah,
been here 3 years. So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, to me, those are the top position groups. We could talk about every position, but to me, those are the top ones. And corner is going to be interesting. We've talked about that in the past, and defensive end. They've got more guys there that are
Oh, and then
proven.
Isaiah Harge, we did it again
Oh yeah,
in that receiver room. I'm
yes, yes,
sorry,
yes,
but
yeah,
we did it again. That's another guy who it's a huge spring for.
yeah, yeah.
Huge
Hmm.
spring for Isaiah Harge. I'm really looking forward to watching him. What, by the way, Buffs fans, you're looking for a fan favorite. I know some of you, the diehards out there know about Harge, but Isaiah is such a nice kid. Not that these other guys aren't, but I really, really like him.
Yeah,
He's one of those guys that could be a fan favorite, and when you hear him in interviews, just a really wonderful young man.
yeah, and he looked good in that Oklahoma State game. So,
Yeah, very much.
yeah, yeah. Sorry that I forgot about him. I've got him listed on my list for corners and not a receiver, so I often forget about him.
You
But
put him at running back too.
yeah, just put him everywhere. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun spring. One last thing, Matt, like it's probably some guys we already talked about, but give me a couple players you're most looking forward to watching this spring. I know we're not gonna be out of practice, but as far as when you're watching the well off or when you're
If
watching the
you
spring
were in
game,
there,
but
yeah.
like who are you most looking forward to watching or hearing about and finding out like their progress this spring?
Number one for me is Samuel Okunlola. That's one guy that if he puts it all together and prioritizes being great, meaning,
Yeah.
making a total sacrifice. He could be a special talent. He's just got all the physical tools. He does some stuff that you just can't teach. I want to see how seriously, he's attacking things because he's a little softer spoken, or at least he is with us.
Hmm.
So that's a guy that I want to see come out of his shell, take more of a leadership role and not be as timid and shy as maybe the guy that we'd seen last year. And certainly with maturity, that's going to happen, I would hope. But for him, that's one of those things where he's got such ability that I think if you're able to just kind of bring that confidence and that mentality that maybe he didn't have at times last year, it's not so much a technique and a repetition thing. It's literally a mindset thing, and it can take you from this type of player into this type of player. So I would say Okunlola is number one on my list. Do you want to trade back and forth, or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I'll go. I'll stay on defense and go Colton Hood. I mean, he's a guy that I'm looking forward to seeing taking that next step. We saw him play quite a bit, but in a backup role at corner this last year, and now with Travis gone, he's got an opportunity to seize a starting job, and I think a lot of Buff fans um, feel pretty highly about him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him take that opportunity and run with it. And so he's one of those guys on defense that because I feel confident with DJ McKinney and Preston Hodge and even Carter Stoutmire, but Colton Hood is one of those guys. This is going to be a new role for him. Let's see how he seizes that opportunity.
Yeah, I like that. Colton, there's a lot of fans that are very excited about what Colton's going to be able to bring to the table. And, along with, as you mentioned, Hodge, McKinney, and certainly Harge,
Yeah,
right? You've got four guys right there. And then obviously add in some of the transfers and, Vickers, etc. My next guy is going to be Carter Stoutmire. We talked about leadership tent poles. I'm looking right at him. He's one of those guys that when Shiloh went down, man, we thought at times played kind of elevated the level of play, right?
yeah,
At certain times.
yeah,
This is a really smart young man, another great young man, and someone that I think is ready to take that next step. Physically, he's got everything that you could want in a safety. Big, fast, physical, and he's smart, right? Right. His dad played in the NFL, and it kind of continues that tree. And not to mention that, I think this is a young man who could have transferred either after last year or after last spring or
mhm.
even after the end of this year if he wanted to. But he's like totally bought in here. Obviously, his pops and Coach Prime are very close, but that's a guy along with Savion Riley, but specifically Carter Stoutmire, who they need a replacement for Cameron Stillman Craig. He's going to have first crack at it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I like that one. I'm high on Carter Stoutmire. I'm going to go offense with my other one with Isaiah Gustive. We haven't
Yeah.
talked about running back on this podcast, but uh, look, somebody has to emerge at running back, in my
Somebody.
opinion, and I just think he's the most talented running
Yeah.
back, and I think that there is, if you commit to the run, I think that's 1,000 yard back. I think there's potential in him to be that type of player. And so I would like to see that out of him starting to emerge this spring. And, you saw flashes of it last year, but they've never been totally committed to the run. So I want to see him have a spring to where it almost makes the coaches say, yeah, we need to run the ball because we want the ball in his hands. Because every time he touches it, something good happens. And so I think more than any other back that they have, and I like Michael Welch. I'm maybe a little higher on Dallin Hayden than you are. I don't think he's got star potential. I like him in spots. Charlie does some good things. I really like what Brandon Hood can do, but I think Isaiah is the most talented of those backs, and I would love to see him kind of step up. He's now a third-year guy who's had some opportunities and run with it, but I'd like to see him, step up and emerge as the star and seize that job.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that he just kind of falls under the category of I don't know how much better he'll have gotten from the end of the season. We saw him a lot. Hopefully, he's gotten a little bit bigger, but certainly the gains that he makes over the summer are going to be super important as well. The name I'll
Yeah.
throw out and that we could go through the rest of the roster and I can tell you this guy and that guy. The other one is Brandon Hood because they did not add another back and because of how much Colton came on last year. And some of the stuff that I saw out of Brandon in the one open practice that we were able to see in fall camp, there's size there, and I kind of liked what I saw out of him. So somebody's got to step up, man. Like it's got to be totally different. And now with Coach Falk, how does he have those guys going? Does his impact alone, right, like raise the level in that room? I would hope. So we'll see how that goes. But Brandon
Yeah.
Hood would be the guy because I already know I'm with you. Isaiah Gustav is definitely their best back. He's really the only one that I think has earned a right to be a factor next year, and everybody else I think has to earn that again. Micah showed some stuff, but I think now with Brandon Hood having another year under his belt, can he push Welch and Hayden, right?
Yeah.
Because I would say that all three of those guys are somewhat similar. So, that's the position that I really hope they're not done in.
Yeah.
We talked about some of this other stuff, but I genuinely hope that they are not done there. They
Yeah.
can't be. They
Yeah.
can't. They just can't be.
Well, we'll see, right? And I guess we'll cut it off at three each. I'll go with one more, a guy we've already mentioned, but Isaiah Harge. I want to
Yeah.
see him because I think they've spoken so highly of him in the 2 years he's been there, and it's been kind of like uh, almost like just wait till Travis is gone, and he can kind
Yeah.
of be that next guy. And he's not going to be Travis. I don't anticipate him being a full-time starter on both sides of the ball because that's look, there's a reason why Travis was called a unicorn, right? It just doesn't happen. So, but they clearly think highly of him. I'm curious whether he's going to be more of a receiver, more of a corner. I would imagine different from Travis. I think that you've almost got to pick one side for Isaiah to be that's his main spot. And he'll still be in the gray jersey, I would imagine. But I'm excited to see him and find out where does he actually land. Is he more of a factor at receiver? Is he a star? I'm excited to see him.
I'll also say, yes, ditto there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but most of their work last year was inside. It really depends upon the weather here. It
Yeah,
is going to be stunning this week. I really hope they're outside for a couple of days. I really do. It's going to be nice. So I don't know if they will be. I don't know if the grass and the turf is good to go after winter time, but it's stunning. Today was beautiful. This week is
yeah,
supposed to be like 70s. So, I mean, again, you got to take advantage while you got them. I'm sure there will be if it calls for it and the conditions are ready to go. But I'm excited because here we go. We're not going to get much, as far as our side of it goes outside of the spring game, right? I
yeah,
mean, sure, what they choose to tell us, but coaches are always very political, and most of these guys understand that they've got to play things close to the vest with Coach Prime. For sure. So I don't anticipate to learn much of anything except for maybe meet a few players, depending upon, who they feel like giving us, and we'll go from there.
yeah. I'm looking forward to it though. I mean, Tuesday is day one, and we're scheduled to get both coordinators and all three quarterbacks.
It'd be great.
Julian Lewis, Caden Salter, Ryan Staub. So we'll get a lot. And Thursday, they said we're going to get the new position coaches hired since the end of 2025 or since the end of the 2020
Could be
24 season.
anybody.
So, I mean, that's Marshall Falk. That's
Domata Pecco,
Domata Pecco, uh,
Andre Gerard, if you wanted
Andre,
to.
yeah, well, probably Gunnar White more so because Andre's
Yeah,
that
I'm just
assistant,
throwing
but
out new names.
yeah,
That's all.
so we'll see who we get there, and yeah, there's gonna be a decent amount of interviews this week, and I think none of us have heard from these quarterbacks, and I'm excited. I'm always excited to learn from the coordinators, and we haven't heard from them in almost 3 months. So I'm
That'll be
excited
good.
for it. It'll be fun, and get started on Tuesday, and Buff fans will be covering it throughout, and yeah, it'll be fun. We're back at it, Matt.
Yeah, we are. All right, I'll see you this week, buddy.
All right, talk to you guys
All right,
later. Bye.
talk to you later.